Let's get gay! Before we get to today's video, I want to take a moment to talk about Patreon. That's right, we are on Patreon now, and we have a bunch of tiers with a bunch of great rewards. You can subscribe and get things like early access to all reactions, depending on your tier, depends on which reactions you get early access to. You can vote on polls exclusive to patrons that will help determine future reaction series and more. You will get to just have various choices in terms of like getting to choose future reactions I react to, getting to choose first impressions I check out, all kinds of different rewards, and possibly more coming in the future. We're still new at this. We're still figuring things out. It's a process. It's a process. But we have multiple tiers, so whatever you would be able to donate, if you're able and willing to donate, is appreciated. It helps me out, it helps the channel out, it helps us grow. It's going to help just, standardly. It's just something new to check out. Plus, if you like getting the reactions early, that's also a plus. But it is optional. If you're unable to do it, that's completely fine. All reactions will come to YouTube just a little bit later, a week later or so. So, that all being said, thank you as always so much, and let's get on with today's video. And with that being said, hey everyone, welcome to Princess of Gay. I'm your host Connie, and today we are here with my blind reaction to Lesbian Space Princess. This is a donation reward for Venom, so thank you Venom for donating. And yeah, I'm excited to see this because I've heard about this movie, and I don't entirely know what to expect. I've seen what the animation style looks like, at least to some degree. It's very abstract, I guess is the best way to put it. Like, the characters don't look like they're trying to be like realistic depictions of humans or anything. Like, not it's even more abstract than something like Steven Universe or something, where it's like, oh yeah, the human characters at least look like humans to some degree, even if their proportions are weird or their like specific shapes are a little off. But it's like it's much like more artistic and expressive with that. And I think that could be really interesting. Now, I don't know anything about the plot of this. I can assume maybe a few things about the title. But yeah, I don't know like anything about the plot, anything about the characters or voice actors. All I know is that like there's a character who I guess is going to be a lesbian space princess. A princess probably from another planet who is a lesbian. And like I haven't heard pretty much anyone talking about this film. It's one that I feel is like has kind of flown under the radar. And I mean, I know there's a lot of people who don't tend to like look up to many of the overtly queer pieces of media. A lot of times those will tend to fly under the radar. I can give you some examples. One more recently is a video game that's coming out this month called 1348 Ex Voto, which I will be doing for the gaming channel, by the way. But 1348 Ex Voto is a game that is overtly and very like notably queer. And it's not trying to be anything else. Like it's a game like you play as a knight and you're trying to rescue your beloved and all. And both the knight and the beloved are women. It also stars Jennifer English, who's known for the likes of Claire Obscure Expedition 33, where she was Mael, and Baldur's Gate 3, where she played Shadowheart. And she is openly queer. And so it's like, it's a very overtly queer game. They don't hide it at all. And unfortunately, with like a lot of people talking about game releases for March, they like have just been entirely like ignoring this game a lot of the time. There are some creators I've seen mention it, but a lot of them seem to be just like not like acting like it doesn't exist. They're talking about like other independent games. They're talking about like big AAA titles, and they just never mention this game when they talk about games coming out this month because it's flying under the radar. And part of that's because it's independent, and I assume the same with this movie. It's an independent film, so a lot of a lot of people just aren't going to have heard about it. But there are people out there, even people who aren't necessarily like homophobic or anything, but there are people out there who just like see a movie that's very specifically like targeted at this kind of demographic, that's very specifically like even labeled and named after this kind of demographic, and they think like, oh, this is probably some kind of like um parody film or something, and it's like, I'm not quite into that. This is probably going to be very tongue in cheek, and it's probably going to be very like over the top, and I look for like more serious movie going experiences or stuff like that. People might have heard about this but just weren't interested in it because the title is so overt. It's so straightforward and is telling you like very, very, very directly. Because even other just notably queer movies that are like mainstream big queer movies oftentimes get overlooked as well. Like I think the only really big one that is like super overtly queer that was also mainstream that people like really talk about or really had any like notable interest in was Brokeback Mountain. There's others that have had queerness in them, especially in more modern day films, but like ones that are about queerness seem to be avoided by a lot of the viewer base. And I think the idea kind of centers around, it's like, oh, this movie is like all about just that, and they worry maybe that the movie might not have much else to it, or like for a lot of the people who are like straight and cis and whatnot might not be interested in it because it's like, this is specifically for queer people. I'm not queer, so it's not for me. It's not my it's not made for my demographic, which by the way is a stupid argument in the first place. And it's not a like bigoted argument. It's just like, it's just dumb because it's like, you can watch a movie that's not made for you. Like, that logic means like, if you went by that logic, you couldn't watch any foreign movies ever. You couldn't watch Sinners because that's made for black people, giving them a voice and everything. By that logic, right? But no. It's like everyone can enjoy these movies because they're good movies. They're well made. And honestly, a lot of these movies should be viewed by people who aren't in those demographics so they can maybe learn some shit. Especially stuff like Sinners. Sinners is a great example because it's like, I have actually heard some people say like I'm just not interested because I'm not the demographic for this. And it's like, what does that even fucking mean? Do you like vampire movies? Yeah, but it's a movie for and about black people. And it's like, okay, so why does that mean you can't watch it? Why does that mean you can't enjoy it? Why does that mean you can't learn shit from it? That the argument just falls apart. And so it's like, I don't know. I don't know what the reason this went under the radar is. Maybe it just had like really poor advertising. Because I'd only heard about it a couple of times myself, but the point is, I have not heard anyone mentioning this movie. I've not seen anything about it anywhere on social media or YouTube or anything. Like even from a lot of like queer sources that I follow, I have heard nothing. And that doesn't really imply much of anything based on the quality of the film, but I'm wondering if the advertising was just like, modern Disney levels of shit. Because let's be honest, Disney really doesn't advertise their movies well anymore. They haven't for a long time. Unless it's the live action remakes. They advertise the shit out of those. They put literally their entire advertising budget into those and nothing else. Their new movies that come out, no advertising pretty much. Like pretty much every movie Disney slash Pixar has released in like the past, like almost a decade now. Like I keep hearing people saying, I didn't even know this movie was being made. I didn't know this movie was coming out. And they're saying this like after it's already come to DVD or not DVD, but home video and stuff. After it's already come to streaming. It's like I didn't even know this was ever in theaters because they don't fucking advertise it. And nobody's talking about it because they don't know about it. I'm sorry, I started ranting against Disney here. But the point is, I'm wondering if this movie was just really poorly advertised, and if it's in an independent film, like really independent, I could see that being the case. Because a lot of times it's hard to get like a good advertising budget for a lot of these like super independent films. A lot of it relies on word of mouth, and sometimes it just doesn't quite work out as well as it could and should. And so yeah, I'm sorry for the long rambling and ranting in these pre-thoughts, but like I said, I didn't really have any knowledge of what's going to happen in this movie, so I had to talk about something. And all of this kind of like stemmed from just the fact that this movie has kind of flown under the radar and just haven't heard anyone talking about it whatsoever. So I guess we'll find out what this is like. And hopefully it ends up being good. So let's get into this and find out. Hold up just a sec. Before you click that link down in the description below to get to today's video, I want to remind you of all the awesome content we have both on this channel and the Princess of Gaming channel. Let's check it out. Welcome to the Afterthoughts, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So I watched the credits part again where it showed like all of the like aftermath photos and stuff. And like I was kind of like confused and thrown off at first, so I wasn't like paying as much attention as I could have. It looked like it showed Syra and her mom's visiting Blade, and it looked like they were having like some kind of like talk about like their relationship with each other. And I don't know how Blade is still alive in the first place, but okay. But it seemed, and when it shows like Syra heading off with the ship and everything, and her mom's waving goodbye, it's like it kind of implies that they have gotten onto a better foot with each other, and they're in a much better, like, healthier relationship as mothers and daughter than they were before. And that's good. It honestly feels a little tacked on at the end, of course, but I want to talk about the Willow stuff. So at the end, it shows like Syra receives a package, which is the album from Willow, the album Willow said they were going to write. And Willow says it's a hit, and we see Willow performing and seemingly doing really well for themselves. So there's the implication that their relationship does like remain on good terms, that they are still friends. And here's the thing. when you see throughout this, after Willow's introduction, that Willow and Syra are really, like, really good and positive and healthy for each other, to the point where Willow's relationship with Syra is helping Syra, be more self-confident, be more, like, positive. As a viewer, you're instantly made to desire them to end up together, as I was. Because, again, it's healthy, it's good for both of them. It's just a genuinely good relationship. And the reason that they didn't get together is very clearly, and I looked this up to confirm, it is very clearly because the idea of this is about, like, self-love and self-acceptance. And it's like, you have from the beginning, Syra is, like, being, like, pressured by her moms and, I guess, society in general to be with someone, especially with this lesbian ball and everything. And the idea is, like, Syra learning to love herself and be comfortable with being by herself, compared to at the beginning where she's, like, really depressed and anxious and self-loathing because of, having been dumped and being alone now. The idea is, like, that's what the main theme of this is meant to be about. And that's the idea. But like I said, when you spend all that time building up Syra and Willow's relationship to the point where it's very clear that Willow's self-confidence literally would not have reached the point it was without Willow. Or did I say Syra's self-confidence. Syra's self-confidence and her boost in self-appreciation and love was because of Willow. Willow, treating Syra properly and being super, healthy and caring towards her is what got Syra to be able to have the confidence she needed to do all of this stuff. To save and then dump Kiki for good. To be able to, have this talk with her moms that's, again, shown in the credit sequence. To be able to, let's be honest, bring forth her Labrise in the first place. To be able to call out to Blade, to even be able to get to the point of bringing forth her Labrise in the first place. Syra literally didn't do this on her own. And if you're trying to make a point about, like, if you're trying to make the main theme and end goal of this being self-confidence and self-love, that's great. That's a lesson that absolutely should be told. But why do you then make it very clear, if you're going to want to have her end up alone, but, like, happily alone, because she's, because it's focusing on her self-confidence and self-love rather than a relationship she would be in, why do you then make a massive point of making her and Willow's relationship so healthy and good for her to the point where it's literally the reason that she gains this self-love? Having her end up in the relationship with Willow in the end would not have taken away from the self-love message at all. In fact, honestly, it would have made it better. Because because it's literally, again, what helped her realize that she could care about herself. Willow is the source of her self-confidence. And you say, but oh no, self-confidence has to come from yourself. That's the point. And in the end, Syra made the decisions herself and came to these conclusions herself for herself. And that, yeah, but it all stemmed from how Willow started treating her. The first person who not only cared about her, but cared about her in a healthy, safe way. If Willow hadn't done that, Syra would have never made it. And Kiki would be dead. Syra would probably be dead. Like, when Willow, before leaving, says fuck you to Syra, it's like, you just expect like they're okay by the end because of that post credit thing. It's like, I don't know, it just feels like you set something up and then just tore it away to try to like express the message, but it actually hurt the message, I feel. Because it makes no sense to me. It makes no sense why you would like have Syra lose the one person who allowed her to become self-confident and self-loving in the first place. You can be self-loving and be with someone. Like, Willow alone proved that. If you wanted to make this message, then you would have had to have, if you wanted to make this message with having Willow, like, with having Syra dump Willow and nothing ever coming back with that, the only way to make that work would to be have there to be some kind of like aspect to Willow that's either toxic towards Syra, or you would have to have verbalized better that Syra realizes she didn't want a partner. And that was the point, that she wanted to be on her own, at least for now. But that was never even verbalized. When she was dumping Willow, it was literally like, just like, oh, I think we should just be friends. And she just kept repeating that over and over, not actually explaining anything, not actually going into depth with anything. Because she was so focused on the time, like with Kiki having manipulated her back into like that kind of like toxic love. And it's like, that's the entire reason she dumped Willow in the first place. After having realized how toxic and terrible Kiki was, would it not make sense for Syra to like rethink things and realize, oh, I would have never gotten to this point. I would never be like have this self-confidence I have now if not for Willow. And I realized that I was happy with Willow. I was the happiest I've ever been. And that I want to be with them. That would have been much more satisfying and like feeling like where the actual story was going. It just doesn't make a lot of sense or work with Syra just dumping them and just not having anything come back with that. It doesn't make sense for that to never, like, for that ship to not sail, we'll say. And I'm not just saying this because, oh, queer ship, I have to support it or anything. There's like I'm genuinely, I've been trying, between recording the reaction and these afterthoughts, been trying to understand the other side, understand the point of view on like, on like them not ending up together, and it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me. And it's also just the point of like, when you build up for a good portion of the film for these characters to get together, and then even though they're amazing for each other, even though they're super healthy and like caring for each other, even though it's a genuinely good, respectable relationship, you just have them break up just because of the bullshit manipulation from Kiki, and then nothing like ever comes of that. It feels like you just abandoned the entire plot line. And it's just, it feels like a disappointment in the end because of that. And I'm not saying, by the way, the entire movie is a disappointment. I'm just talking about this one part of the plot line. I've literally, for these past like 11 and a half minutes or so, just been talking about this one bit. But that's because it's like, it really feels like it just feels like a bad decision in the end. And the worst part of this, the reason why I'm talking so long on that alone, the reason why I'm so invested in that specific part, again, it's not just because queer relationship, and I want to support queer relationships. It's because the reason I'm so upset by that decision is because if they had gotten back together, I would have considered this a perfect movie. If they had gotten back together and Syra realized that her self-confidence, her self-love, was ignited in the first place because of Willow, and that because of that, Syra was able to see for herself and think for herself, and Willow gave her the encouragement and the drive to actually make her own decisions. If she had realized that Willow helped her realize that and helped her become that, and she went back to them and they became a couple again, I feel this movie would have been perfect. Because I feel like it would have been like a properly set up conclusion that would have felt like it was like, you know, a proper payoff to everything that had been built into. And it would have, again, like, acknowledged that sometimes it's hard to find self-love and self-confidence within yourself, and you do sometimes need help. Because I feel like that's the big thing here. The writers, the creators of this are trying to say, like, oh, self-confidence has to come from yourself, and otherwise it's not really self-confidence. But the problem is that's not inherently true. A lot of times, self-confidence is ignited by other people who help you realize that you're worth having self-confidence and self-love. A good amount of the time, a lot of people can't get to that point on their own. And I'm speaking from experience here. I am speaking from direct experience here, so I'm not just talking out my ass. The amount of self-love I currently have, I would have never been able to get to if not for people in my life. I was literally at a point where I was attempting suicide because I hated myself. And because of other factors in my life, but especially because of my self-hatred. I had no way to be able to find that within myself. Again, I was literally trying to kill myself because I couldn't find it in myself. I had to have friends and people around me, like, encourage me and bring out the best in me for me to be able to start making those decisions on my own. Before I could even begin to have that self-confidence in myself from a place of my own being, I had to have people help me because that's how bad off I was prior. I see a lot of myself in Syra here. Syra very much like feels like a reflection of my own experiences, my own anxieties, my own fears. And I mean, obviously, like, that's going to ring true for a lot of people, but Syra was in a bad enough place to where she literally could not, as much as she tried, find any self-confidence and self-love within herself. Again, without Willow, she would have died. 100%. She would have never even made it to the straight white Malians, never saved Kiki, who would have also died. She would be dead. Willow's like unbelievable positivity and kindness and wholesomeness and love is what allowed Syra to break away from her anxiety, to be able to find enough comfort to be able to look into herself and actually believe in herself. Her self-love does come from her, but it was, again, unlocked thanks to Willow. Willow was absolutely key to this. And so it just, because I see so much myself in Syra, and because I needed other people to help me be able to find this self-confidence that I now have as a, out non-binary trans person, as someone who is, an out pansexual. I would be dead if not for those other people who helped me. Just like Syra would be. And I'm not saying like my relationship with any of these people who have helped me was a love relationship. It wasn't. But I would never just suddenly abandon them and like start to lose contact with them for the most part just because I found my own self-confidence at that point. Like these people are still super important to my life like 9 years later. Well, 9 years later this coming November. These people, like, I'm still in contact with. And I plan to always be so. Because they are an integral part of my journey. And again, I know that in the end, like, there's the hint of a possible, like, positive relationship still with Willow sending the album and all. But it's not the same because they're still completely separated. They're not seeing each other anymore. It was just like, and not even in a friendship sense. There's no hint that they're even friends still. There's just the hint that, like, I guess Willow doesn't hold it over Syra's head and isn't, like, pissed off at her anymore. That's it. I don't know. I really don't like how that ended. I really don't like how Willow was just left to the wayside. It just feels incredibly, like, just almost insulting, honestly. Like, if I were Willow, I would be insulted still. I wouldn't have forgiven Syra. Because, like, there'd be no reason to after all of that. And you see in the card here, the card at the end, I'm going to mute this, obviously. But when it shows, like, the album, it's like, you see on the album cover, Willow is, like, crying and holding themselves and everything. The album is called Songs Specifically About Syra. And then it goes to the next shot after that. Give it a second here. And it shows Willow performing on stage. And yeah, they're smiling and they seem happy. They've moved on. The idea reads as Willow has moved on. And has just left Syra behind completely. I feel bad for Willow in the end. That's what this ending makes me feel. It doesn't make me feel happy for Syra. It makes me feel bad for Willow. Because I feel like Willow just was really got the shitty end of the stick in the end. Especially considering they were dumped like right after like the two of them also had like really like good, healthy, passionate sex. It's like to be at that kind of like mental high, emotional high after like realizing that their relationship is that good for each other, and then to be just thrown to the wayside. It's like I feel really bad for Willow in the end, and that's again, it's just it's bothering me. It's mostly all I've been talking about in these afterthoughts, because that's what left the biggest impression on me in the end. And it sucks because it's taking away from otherwise what is a phenomenal movie. Like I said, I connected very deeply and like strongly with Syra as a character in terms of what she was going through, in terms of her feelings, in terms of like just her anxieties and everything, and a lot of her emotional turmoil and self-hatred that she's gone through. And I like the humor in this. It's very tongue-in-cheek, it's very satirical, it's very much like wearing its queerness on its sleeve. And that's very much the intent. It's it's meant to be in your face. It's meant to be very aggressive about it. It's meant to like be very jokey and ridiculous and silly about it. And there's a lot of things that are like making a lot of like notable points. A lot of like good commentary. Like with the straight white Malians. And even with them like secretly ending up being like, you know, gay in the end, it's like there's a lot to say about that. About like self hatred to the point of denying your own queerness while you act as a bigot towards others. And there's like some really like ridiculous over the top fun scenes. The nightclub was fun. Like I especially liked Willow and Syra mishearing each other, and the entire bit with the pineapple. I liked the scene with Syra like meditating with Blade, and then Blade's betrayal after, which was, you know, not that much of a surprise, but still. I like how throughout the journey the ship goes from being, you know, misogynistic and homophobic and shit into being an ally by the end. Even if still not perfect and still having trouble like remembering how to say Syra's name and shit, and you know, not having quite gotten perfect yet. But at least he's trying, right? There's so many good moments in this movie. I love the art and animation. Having it be like kind of like this silly, awkward style really helped for a lot of the fluidity of the movements and a lot of the like really more trippy scenes, like the anxiety sequences and all. Like this was very much a necessary art style choice. The voice acting was great. I loved the music. I loved just pretty much everything about it except how it ended. And it just, I don't know, maybe I'm just not seeing it, but I just feel like this ending, it just doesn't make sense to me. With everything that had been built up, and with what the themes are even trying to be, I just don't feel like it clicks. Finding self-love and self-confidence doesn't mean you have to be alone in the end. especially when, again, the source of how you even were able to find that self love and self confidence came from someone else helping you. And then you just ditch them, throw them away like trash. It's just. Like I genuinely meant it when I said that I feel this film would have been a perfect film for me. I've seen so many movies over the years, and so few of them have made my short list of films I consider to be perfect. And this movie is clearly one that's like entirely my thing. It's entirely on my radar. It's entirely my kind of humor, my kind of ridiculousness, my kind of like sexiness to a degree, my kind of just queerness, honestly, obviously. And it was just that ending. And it's still, even with that ending, it's still a great movie. It's still a phenomenal movie. But that ending knocked it out of my list of perfect films. It made it just, phenomenal, just great, but not perfect. The ending just feels like not great to me. I'm sorry if I can't word this or like phrase this in a more like better sounding way. I've talked before how I'm not like the great at the best at expressing my thoughts. I'm not like the greatest at like being able to find the right words or phrases or whatnot. Um, but I hope I'm getting my point across. I hope that you see where I'm coming from. Even if you disagree, and if you do disagree on the ending, and you actually see it as a good thing that they didn't end up together, please like try to tell me why in the comments. I'm asking you to do so because I genuinely want to hear your point of view, and I want to see if like maybe you can help me understand. I'm very open to having this discussion because like I genuinely don't get it. It genuinely like really doesn't make sense to me. And it's just I really really wish that I did understand because again, that's clearly what the creators of this were going for, and I want to understand their vision, but it's like it just comes across in a different way to me. As someone, as just a viewer, as someone who connected with Cyrus' character, as someone who like really liked Willow's character, as someone who was just like, paying attention to what was being set up in the film. It just I just don't get it. But yeah, let me know if you have thoughts on that. And let me know about your thoughts on the rest of this film, on just all of the craziness of it, the over the top weirdness, the very direct referencing to stuff like Revolutionary Girl Utena. Let me know your thoughts on all of it. And if there's something specific that I didn't talk about, because again, my thoughts are clouded by the one thing mostly. If there's something specific I didn't talk about that you would love to hear my thoughts on, please feel free to ask in the comments. I do see every comment. So if there's something I need to respond to, I absolutely will. But thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to Venom for donating for this. And for now, I'm Connie and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.